Well, I appreciate being here. Obviously, I live in North Dakota. I come over to Minnesota as a guest and fish a lot. I enjoy fishing here. And obviously, like many people, invest in what happens in Minnesota. And most of all, I feel like opportunities like this are great examples for other states to watch and follow. And so this isn't just something that could change Minnesota, it's something that could change the entire Midwest. And that's exciting for me. Sometimes in my travels, I see a little bit of negativity. It's easy for people to be cynical. It's easy to dwell on the bad. Uh, you have a tough fishing springs, you have a tough year, whatever it is. And, the world changes and life moves on. And sometimes it's hard to keep up with change as well. It's interesting, probably one of the hottest things that I'm aware of was forward-facing solar. Okay, and obviously that's the elephant in the room. And this is just myself speaking, I'm not so concerned about technology. I don't think that you have to worry about what's in somebody's hands, what's in somebody's heart, or what's in somebody's head. And then I've seen fisheries get wiped out with 16-foot tri-balls and super 1600 flashers. I've seen lakes get decimated with a bunch of farmers with hockey sticks with black daffron line wrapped around the hockey stick. They would sit there pickups. When the bobber got pulled off the ice into the hole, they would run out of their trucks and grab the fish. Okay. And I tell you what, where we're standing here today, about 12,000 years ago, was about 300 feet of ice in the glacier. Okay. As those glaciers receded, there was actually a big lake called Lake Haggis, which was where Moorhead sits today. A 300-foot lake. Think about how much the world's changed since then, right? But what's interesting is anthropologists studied that during that time, so when some of the first human beings entered Minnesota, okay, and during this time, there was a mass extinction of large animals, okay? And so at one time, there was like a three-toed horse. There was a woolly rhinoceros. There's all these giant mammals that in a very, very short amount of time were wiped off the planet by people. Guess what they had? Spears. Okay? That's one thing I would encourage you to do is, there's information, there's technology, there's all these different things changing with this craziness of this world. Okay? But I think we got to look at the 10,000-foot view sometimes and realize that it's what we do with it, how we teach. And one of the things that I'm excited about the future the most, I don't care about forward-facing. I think it's awesome that a 21-year-old kid wins a huge bass tournament, right? That's the future. We need more people doing stuff like that versus peddling drugs or sitting on their phone. That's what problems. A young kid getting really good at fishing quickly. That's your worry in the world. Are you kidding me? Seriously, wow, there can be so many worse things, right? When we got kids walking into schools with guns, with rage and hate in their heart, and you're worried about a kid staring at a solar screen. Fishing is like the greatest pill there is. If you could give any young person a gift, especially if they have hate in their heart, it would be the gift of fishing or the gift of God. Okay? Amen. And for a lot of people that grow up far away from God, fishing is something that can bring you a lot closer. If you didn't believe in God before, you'll believe in God when you're out on the Cold Lake at 4:30 in the morning. Right?
True.
Okay? And so, we got to sometimes take a big look at the big picture. Okay? One of the exciting things I think is, yes, information can travel very fast. But the key to the future, when I look at the future of fishing, there's things we can do better. There's things that we can do differently. There's things that we can tweak. But most of all, I think the information and education is what makes us so exciting because things can travel so quickly. Now, it's a double-edged sword, no doubt. A lake gets put on Facebook, especially if it's your lake where your cabin's at with your fish, right? That's a problem, okay? Right? That's a problem. But the reality is, look at how fast things are spread, like with the barrel trauma thing, okay? Barrel trauma is tricky. How do you regulate that? Say, hey, you can't fish with crappies in the winter anymore because I don't want you killing my fish on my lake, right? Or, hey, you can't fish past 30 feet of water. You can't do this. You can't do that. Pretty soon, you can't do anything. You need to create opportunities and not take opportunities away, right? And so how do you teach that? How do you regulate that? You have to give people the common sense, right? That's why opportunities like this is so important because it opens up so much communication. And that's what I'm excited about. Everybody wants to blame bookface for all these terrible things happening in fishing. But the reality is, think of how fast word spread about how to handle muskies. Or catching muskies in 75-degree surface temps. Or fishing for crappies in 32 feet of water. I might still fish for crappies in 32 feet of water, but I catch my limit and I go home. I'm not patting myself on the back for being a conservationist, is that I got 50 dead crappie floating in the pool, right? Yeah. You know, I mean, tell you what, you know, being in television for all these years, and I go and help and, you know, see some of these perspectives as well, is that what I find is that people want to do the right thing if you just arm them with the information and the knowledge. And a lot of the stuff is evolving, right? I remember on television netting a fish. You know, again, I always joke, if people want to go to plain look at a split shop, none of us would have a job. And if you ever had to go to a state, to a lake far away from home where you know nothing about the lake and catch fish on one of your sponsored lures, and you got to wear the same clothes for 3 or 4 days in a row, right? So, and the locals are like, oh, geez, you know, if you just went out there and just a plain hook and a leech, you catch all kinds of fish. Yeah, I know, but leeches don't sponsor anybody. Right? Come on, you know? I look to either grow up here to be clean shaven because that 5 o'clock shadow is kind of tricky when you've been fishing 3 days in a row and trying to make it look like, you know, you caught the fish in the same port as here. So, you know, I mean, you know, so, but I remember back in the day catching a big walleye, getting in the net, throwing the net on the floor of the boat, holding the fish up way too long out of the water, you know. And now, you know, we've learned like, okay, you know, we can do things better. And the thing is that information spreads so much more quickly now. You know, there's a lot to learn. We don't have everything figured out. For example, barotrauma. There's something to do with latitude of barotrauma too that doesn't get talked about. There's different places where you can go. For example, there's a place up in northern Manitoba called Buzzgunnasail Lake Lodge. And in this lake, it's a fly-in lake where there's probably maybe 10 cabins and 10 to 12 boats going on a day. And besides Lake Winnipeg, this little camp leads Manitoba in master angler inches. That's how many big walleyes they catch out there. It's a pretty good-sized lake, okay? But that's how many big fish are caught. Pretty profound, huh? When you go up there and do it, you realize, like, wow, we just caught that fish this morning. 2 days later, you catch it. And it's funny, like, the more times you catch the same fish, they don't fight quite as hard. You can almost tell. Okay, but it's crazy where we caught the same fish over and over. Well, that inflates the numbers. And so, you know, you're catching, like, it depends. I mean, some days you might catch none, but each boat you're catching, say, 2 to 4 master angler walleyes a day, plus all kinds of other fish in 33 to 42 feet of water. No sign of barotrauma whatsoever. Okay. Then there's other places where 23 feet of water, if I know if that fish was at 50 feet of water an hour earlier, but its eyes are bulging out, you're seeing the barotrauma. And so there's a lot to learn. But the thing is, that's why education is so important. Is that it's going to be really impossible to regulate. Okay, you can't catch walleyes in August, and if you go below 30 feet of water, we're going to write you a ticket. Why wasn't fishing? I had my diameter set at 15 feet. Like we're going to draw the line, right? So that's why education is so important. That's why some of these things that get deemed as bad can also be important. Facebook has ruined fishing. Well, it can also save fishing, depending on the perspective, because of the education. Okay. Education, I think, is going to be the future. Your average angler is going to be a very good angler, but also, too, a very smart angler as far as conservation. Things get spread very quickly as new information arrives. You know, some of the stuff is going to change and evolve and, you know, grow over time, and the angling public can keep up with it. The other thing that I see happening that is a challenge is that we used to be a world of generalists. And now we've become a world of specialists. And what I mean that is, I remember as a kid growing up, there's people that just dabbled in fishing. They weren't really a threat, but they bought a fishing license and they participated a little bit. But they also did a little bit of everything else, right? They would hunt pheasants for a few days. They would hunt ducks for a few days. They would bowl on Wednesday nights. They had all these different interests, okay? And when you look at the world now, we're in such a different world. There's no generalists left. Okay, I'm a bass angler. I'm a muskie guy. I'm an ice angler. I'm a duck hunter. You know, people have gotten really, really specialized. Okay, and so the irony of this is that we're seeing a decline in license sales with the uptick during COVID. We're seeing this steady decline across the board in our outdoor space. But when you talk to people, they're like, oh, I don't know, doesn't anybody work anymore? Where do these people come from? You know? Well, it's a parody, isn't it, right? There's fewer people, but they're much more experienced and hardcore about it. They're much more devoted to it. And we're seeing it in everything, right? Used to be where if you were athletic in high school, you'd be in all kinds of different sports, right? If you ever had a kid in hockey, you know, they don't get to do anything else, and neither does the rest of the family. You're spending $20,000 a year in hotels. Right? You're chasing camps. And so the world's gotten very specialized. And so like every state, everywhere you go across the Midwest, you know, how do we recruit? How do we retain? How do we get more young people fishing? And that's really, really tricky because it takes so much mentorship. It's because the world's gotten so specialized. And so to me, probably the biggest thing that I've seen in my lifetime that I just love, I can't ever think we could ever get enough of in this world, is these high school fishing leagues. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, are there any coaches or people here that are involved in the high school fishing? I mean, to me, you guys are the unsung heroes of this industry, by far. I tip my hat to everything that you guys and gals do for this industry because it's so important. I mean, yeah, you got the parents where you're growing up and you're bringing your kids fishing, but the best part of all is the kid that likes fishing, but his parents don't fish. He can latch onto that, you know, and have access to that and create that passion because it takes a lot of mentorship to create an angler. And that's something that we can never do enough of. You know, as far as all the other stuff, you know, picking on the young generation because they don't know how to fish. They got to use forward-facing sonar. They've never won a tournament without this, without that. I don't have any time for that. Not when there's kids in this world that are walking into schools with guns and shooting people. You think that kid just got to catching a bass on a topwater? Seriously. I guess, like, if you could do that for any young person, if you could get, you know, say if you could double the number of people that fish in this world, the world's such a better place. Half the problems go away. Right? You ever hear about, I just saw on the news, 2 18-year-olds are in a bar parking lot and they stab each other after they got done bow hunting that night. They just got done climbing out of their tree stand. Right? No. Right? Fishing is therapeutic. It's good for people. You know, that's the thing is, you know, that's the thing that people maybe don't always appreciate is what it does for people. Right? These walleyes probably will be here long after we are the way the world's going. Okay, and so it's easy to worry about the wrong things. It's the human component, what fishing does for people. It's funny, I love the Rain River. It's one of my favorite places. I love the Rain River when the forks don't break. Okay,
where the forks break.
Right? When it's not muddy. When I can see my prop or my skag, that is like one of the most favorite places in the world for me. Okay, people are like, I hate the river. There's 4 miles of cars. You got a park, and there's a kid with a golf cart that gives you a ride back to the buffer. Like, you know what? Everybody's out there for the same reason. You know, everybody gets along. That's great.
True.
You know, and then you get the one guy. There's always the one person on the river that doesn't belong there. The world's greatest fisherman, right? Oh, I can't believe people are fishing right next to me. They wouldn't even know where to fish if it wasn't for me. It's like, get over yourself. You do not belong on the river. You know, like you're gonna be part of the community. You know, like what was it, Kevin Van Dam said was, well, you're not part of the community. You know.
Yeah.
Come on, you know, but it's, you know, fishing is good for people. You know, that's probably the biggest thing is don't get caught up in the small stuff. Don't get caught up on the, you know, outlawing this, banning that. We need more people fishing and we need to make the people that are fishing that much more educated. I feel like if you give people that opportunity, they'll give you the benefit of the doubt and they'll usually impress you, right? Mm-hmm. Most people want to do the right thing. Most people care. Most people want to see good fishing in the future. And so if you arm people with that information, that knowledge, I think a lot of that takes care of itself. So that's all I would tell you. As just being a guest to your wonderful state, I truly appreciate all the time I get to spend here. So thank you.
Very good job, Jason. Thank you.
We got a couple questions for Jason, anybody? Quickly.
I'll just blurt it out. Jason, being from Devil's Lake area, and I fish there a lot too, have you seen changes just because there's open season on everything there? Is it still such a good fishery because of freshwater shrimp?
The question is,
has it gone down again?
Yeah, so the question is the open seasons. Now, it's complex. There's no easy answers because you got to remember, I live in a state where there's 600,000 people. Okay? You guys have 600,000 people in one community. So there's a lot fewer people where I'm at. It's just a different mentality. I don't think, this is just my personal opinion, and here's the deal, is if somebody can't change your mind with good information, then you're an idiot, right? And so you can change my mind. I like the idea of having an open season, like say like the Rainy River, the Mississippi River. People say, well, it's going to affect the spawn. These fish aren't going to be able to lay their eggs and spawn. You're harassing during the spawn. I mean, you just had a fish that swim all the way across Lakeland Woods, up the Manitou Rapids, up this spot, past this spot, up this spot. Do you think stretching your mono for 6 minutes is really going to affect the fatigue of the fish? Like, to me, they still get it done, and there's still an opportunity that. One of the things that I like about the spring open fishing is that kids, people that don't have a lot of money, like people say, oh, fishing's a rich man's sport. Like that's a bad thing. Like, oh, if you don't have a 22-foot Ranger boat and a 400 horsepower motor, 2 live scopes and this and this and this, you can't fish. Well, that's so untrue. Like that is the worst pet peeve of mine when people say that. Because if somebody were to put a gun to my head and say, hey, catch a bass over 6 pounds in the Minneapolis Metro, I would sneaky, quietly go get a kayak. And I would get it done. Okay, so what does that tell you, right? It's cool that there's a place where people can catch fish from shore. So like right now, my son just sent me a picture last night. You know, it's holding like a 6-7 pound walleye. He's wearing his jeans and, you know, catching fish from shore. We need more of that kind of stuff, in my opinion, where people can go out and just get hooked fishing with a rhino rod or ugly stick and $10 of the tackle in their pocket. Right? If it takes a $50,000 to $100,000 boat, we're in a bad place. You know, is in my opinion. So I like the open season. I feel like sometimes too, if you have everything open, it spreads everything out. Okay, where you don't have all the pressure just on the crappies or just on the Rainy River, whatever. It just gives more people more opportunities to fish in places. But again,
I wasn't bad enough in the open season.
But the thing is
as good as it was 30 years ago.
Oh, it's, yeah. No, the walleye fishing, I mean, it ebbs and flows. Our deal is high water. Okay, we're a closed basin lake when the lake drops. We have higher dissolved minerals in the lake and we have less reproduction. And so we've had dropping water the last few years, but we've got an unbelievable walleye population. That walleye population will ebb and flow. Right now, it's at a relatively historic high. In the number of 3 to 6 pound fish we have is unbelievable. But, you know, we could have low water. So, I mean, like right now, for example, our perch numbers are low and our pike numbers are low compared to what they used to be, but then our walleye numbers are high. And so, you know, the other thing too is Mother Nature's never static. We're people, we want the world to stay the same forever, but it's changing all the time. You know, and even like with zebra mussels, invasive species, you know, you get these drastic changes. It used to be like some iconic fisheries in Minnesota if you were to back up 30, 40 years ago. You would have your drift sock up in front of your boat, you'd have your fail open, you have your 6-foot snell, and you'd have a little bit of air pump in your night crawler, you'd pump back to the water. And I'm telling you, if you use a forward-facing sonar, the number of days you can catch fish below the boat in Minnesota, I mean, sissy disc readings in Minnesota probably, I mean, they've doubled the last 10, 20 years. If sissy disc is just a white disc you lower on a string, see how clear the water is. Okay, the lakes here, water clarity is off the charts. So that's probably another big thing.
Thank you again, Jason.
Thank you. Appreciate it.